Today our topic is what Plato would say about today's society. If Plato, the great ancient Greek philosopher, were alive today, he would probably have a lot to say about how we live, think, and organize our world. Plato was a deep thinker who cared about justice, truth, and the good life. He believed that society should be guided by wisdom, and that people should strive to understand the deeper truths of existence. So what would he think about our modern world? Let's imagine. First, Plato would likely be amazed by the technology we have today. He would see smartphones, the internet, and social media as tools that could help us learn and connect with others. But he might also warn us about the dangers of these tools. Plato believed that the senses could deceive us, and that true knowledge comes from reason and thinking deeply. Today, we are constantly bombarded with information, images, and opinions, often without taking the time to reflect on what is true or important. Plato would probably say that we are too distracted by the shadows on the wall, just like the people in his famous Allegory of the cave. In that story, prisoners are chained in a cave, only able to see shadows on the wall, which they mistake for reality. Plato would argue that many of us today are like those prisoners, trapped in a world of superficial images and false ideas, instead of seeking the deeper truths of life. Next, Plato would likely criticize the way we value material wealth and status over wisdom and virtue. In his ideal society described in his book The Republic, the rulers were not the richest or most powerful people, but the wisest and most just. These rulers, whom he called philosopher-kings, were trained to understand the true nature of reality and to govern with wisdom and fairness. In our society today, we often admire celebrities, billionaires, and politicians, even if they lack wisdom or moral character. Plato would say that this is a mistake. He would argue that we should value wisdom, justice, and self-discipline above money, fame, and power. He might also point out that many of our problems, like inequality, corruption, and environmental destruction, come from valuing the wrong things. Plato would also have something to say about education. He believed that education was the key to a good society, and that it should focus on developing the mind and character, not just teaching skills or facts. In today's world, education is often seen as a way to get a good job or make more money. While these are important goals, Plato would argue that education should also teach us how to live well, how to think critically, and how to understand the deeper questions of life. He might be disappointed by how little time we spend on philosophy, ethics, and the arts, which he saw as essential for developing wisdom and a sense of beauty. Another thing Plato would notice is the way we treat politics and leadership. In his time, he saw how easily democracies could be corrupted by selfish leaders and ignorant voters. He believed that only people who were trained in philosophy and understood the nature of justice should be allowed to govern. Today, politics is often dominated by short-term thinking, personal ambition, and the influence of money. Plato would say that we need leaders who are wise, just, and willing to put the common good above their own interests. He would also warn us against the dangers of populism, where leaders appeal to emotions and prejudices rather than reason and truth. Plato would also have thoughts about our obsession with entertainment and pleasure. He believed that the pursuit of pleasure could distract us from the pursuit of the good life. In his view, true happiness comes from living in harmony with reason and virtue, not from indulging in endless pleasures. Today we have more ways to entertain ourselves than ever before, from movies and video games to social media and shopping. Plato would say that while these things can be enjoyable, they should not take over our lives. He would encourage us to find a balance between work, leisure, and reflection, and to focus on activities that help us grow as individuals. One of the most important ideas in Plato's philosophy is the concept of the forms. He believed that beyond the physical world we see, there is a world of perfect, unchanging forms, like the form of justice, the form of beauty, and the form of the good. These forms are the ultimate reality, and our world is just a shadow or imitation of them. Plato would say that in today's society we have lost sight of these higher truths. We focus on the surface of things, on appearances and opinions, rather than seeking the deeper, timeless truths that give life meaning. He would encourage us to look beyond the distractions of modern life and to strive for a deeper understanding of reality. Finally, Plato would likely be concerned about the state of our souls. He believed that the soul is the most important part of a person and that it should be cared for through philosophy, self-reflection, and moral living. In today's fast-paced, materialistic world, many of us neglect our inner lives. We are too busy with work, social media, and other distractions to take the time to reflect on who we are and what we value. Plato would say that this is a mistake. He would encourage us to slow down, to spend time in quiet reflection, and to seek the wisdom that comes from understanding ourselves and the world around us. In conclusion, if Plato were alive today, he would likely be both amazed and troubled by our modern society. He would admire our technological achievements, but warn us about the dangers of distraction and superficiality. He would urge us to value wisdom, justice, and virtue over wealth, fame, and power. He would call for a renewed focus on education that develops the mind and character, and for leaders who are wise and just. He would remind us to seek the deeper truths of life and to care for our souls through philosophy and reflection. In short, Plato would challenge us to live better, to think more deeply, and to strive for a society that reflects the highest ideals of wisdom, justice, and the good life. His message is as relevant today as it was over 2,000 years ago, and it is up to us to listen and act on it.